East Tennessee's own WDVX, joined today by one of the co-founders of Little Feat, one of the finest American piano and keyboard players in history, Bill Payne. Bill, thanks for joining us on WDVX today.
A pleasure, Colton. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Outside of course, being one of the founders of Little Feat, which is one of the, if you ask me, one of the finest outfits in American musical history, you've worked with really a who's who of some of the greatest musicians of the last 60 years. J.J. Cale, the Doobie Brothers, of course, Bonnie Raitt, and so many more. And I wonder how a man who goes on to have such an illustrious career in music starts. And I want to learn a little bit about your early life in music and your early influences. So what was some of the first music that caught your ear? And talk to us about your early life in music.
Well, sure, yeah. I probably started playing piano when I was 4.5. So, and I got a teacher right before I turned 6 years old. I had a teacher, Ruth Newman, Ventura, California, who would teach me piano until I was 15. So I was learning Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, etc. But she said to my mom, I'll teach Bill how to read music, but let's make sure he knows, let's not take the magic out of it for him. So I was listening to the radio like a lot of kids were. My sister was 9 years older than me, and she turned me on to Elvis Presley. I was listening later to Little Richard and Fats Domino, and there was a song by the Olympics when I was in 4th grade, maybe 5th, that was called Big Boy Pete. But yeah, radio was a big deal growing up. And so we were listening to all kinds of pop music from Alley Poop, from the Hollywood Argyles on up and down. So those were my earliest influences in rock and roll were, as I said, Little Richard and Elvis, Fats Domino, etc.
Was rock and roll sort of where it was at for you as a young man, or were you interested in as well in the classical pieces that you were learning to play on the piano, or were you like one of those students who was, no, I want to play what I'm hearing on the radio or what I'm picking up in record stores?
Well, I was doing it all, and so I was, the assemblies, I'd play something and people go crazy, and there was a piece that I played. I was probably again in 4th grade, I think, and maybe 5th again, and it was a kind of a Chinese rock and roll thing. And I told it to Tommy Johnson years later. I mean, when I was in the studio with the Doobie Brothers, I'd play this kind of lick in one of their songs, not as a joke, but I was just tired. I'd been playing music with them all day, and I asked them to take it out. They go, no, we love that lick. And so I told them about playing in 4th grade for the assemblies and this little Chinese song. Well, Tommy Johnson called me up 22 years later. He says, you know that lick you played? I go, yeah. And I'm like, hey, Bill, how you doing? He said, as a result of that lick you played and the story you told, I went home that night and called that song China Grove.
Wow.
And I said, hey, man, where's my publishing?
They did get you some checks for that, huh?
Well, it was all good, man. And the lick, it's in the bridge of China Grove. Da 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 da. That is the thing that I played, and they just said, no, we're keeping it. Okay, great, thanks.
How incredible is it that some lick you learned when you were in primary school, a fun little lick resurfaces years and years later when you weren't even really thinking about it? Sounds like it was just muscle memory that lick made its way out.
Well, the lick was changed a little bit, but the intent was it was more of a Chinese sort of thing, I guess. But yeah, it was just it's a good point. Nobody's ever brought that up to me before, but I see what you're getting at, because it did come out of nowhere. I mean, the song was there obviously, but I guess he hadn't called it China Grove yet, so which is what the chorus was about. And I've never actually talked to Tommy about it, and I probably should.
It's incredible how sort of almost serendipitously those licks or influences or thoughts will come up when you least expect them and be majorly impactful.
Absolutely. I'm writing a book right now called Carnival Ghost, and I'm in the editing phases of it. And so a lot of these stories are in there, of course, but um, yeah, the thing you're mentioning, Colton, about serendipity is a theme that runs throughout my book. I mean, because there's just so many things that happen that I would put into the file of the mysteries of life. I have no idea why they happened, or um, it could. There's a wide range of things, like you said. But when we did Rooster Rag, which is a song I wrote with Robert Hunter. Um, I had this phenomenon going on. I was writing with Robert back and forth about it a little bit, where everywhere I went, there would be roosters. If I was at a rehearsal hall that Jackson Brown and Bonnie Raitt, Little Feat used to rehearse at in North Hollywood, I saw these fellows and I go, yeah, this rooster phenomenon. They go, look at the rug you're standing on. And I did, and it was ringed with roosters. I went, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So bits and pieces like that, and who the heck knows?
Incredible. I think what I do know is for all those bits of serendipity as they sort of branched into musical output, that we in the listening audience were the big winners, it sounds like.
Well, it's a two-way street for sure on that level. I mean, I don't write in a vacuum. I'm writing for put my own seatbelt on first, I guess, but I'm writing for all of us. I mean, that want to hear it. I mean, I think music is still impactful, as you were saying. It's we try and lessen the arts sometimes, and I think that's a mistake. The arts are important, and they're also not benign. So we got to be mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. So we talked a little about your earliest musical influences with learning to play piano and keeping it tuned in on your FM dial. And I want to move forward just a little bit and learn some
Hmm.
about your early career in music with bands. What were some of the first outfits that you ever played in, playing with people? What kind of music were you playing in your earliest times playing with other folks in bands or in jams or anything like that?
Sure. Well, I started playing in bands when I was 15. My music teacher that I'd mentioned before, Ruth Newman, had just passed away, and I was pretty depressed about it. And right about that time, um, my mother told me there was somebody from the school that had called her, and her son was in a band and wanted me to audition for it. Well, I went to audition to play drums, not keyboards, but they happened to have a keyboard set up in the rehearsal room. And I just nonchalantly walked over there, flipped the lid open, standing as an upright. I stood there to play the piano. They go, hang on a second, you play the piano? And I go, well, I guess. And so they said, well, forget this band. We got a group down the street. It's called the Debonaires. It's in Santa Maria, California, which is Central California, on the coast or near the coast. And I just that's the way I started out. I was they said we have a keyboard for you, which was some kind of electric organ, I think at first, and then I graduated, if I can call it that, to a farfisa,
Hmm.
which is like an earwig boring a drill through your brain kind of sound. But I played that for a while, and then there was a group called Something Wild, also from Santa Maria, and we were playing more original material with that band. But the earlier bands, we were playing the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. We were just top 40 kind of hits that we could hear on the radio, and we would play them. And we're doing 4 and 5 sets a night, which is a long time to play, but
Right.
that's the way we develop our chops. And um, I'd never actually played with a band before. It was always just solo piano, or if I was doing something at school, it was with a choir or whatever. And I played in church, played pipe organ. Um, so I was pretty well rounded, but I mean, but bands really opened up a whole new door for me. And I was, uh, man, what am I? I'll be 77 this month, and I'm still in a band. So there we go.
So the band was opened the door wide open to you. What was the scene like back then, man? And when in your early days in those outfits, and kind of getting on into the time where you would meet and be introduced with Lowell. What was the scene like back then?
Well, the scene was exploding pretty much. I mean, everybody and their brother was playing music, and not all of them were good. I mean, as the case may be. There was a group up in Northern California where I really wanted to go. I didn't want to go to Los Angeles, but I went up to Northern California first. And this band lived at Big Brother and the holding company's old house. Big Brother, those guys, they backed up Janis Joplin, right?
Right.
So I was there playing with these guys, and they were essentially they were drug dealers, and they played instruments, but they didn't play very well. And I thanked them vociferously for letting me, hang out with them and stuff. And but I said, this is not the kind of music I wanted to play. We were doing like one note or one chord jams, playing in the key of E for 15 minutes. And I was like, there's got to be something better than that. And around that time, I heard an album called Uncle Meat by Frank Zappa. And I just fell in love with it. And I thought, well, I don't want to go to LA, but I've got to go to LA now because that's where Frank is. So I found my way down there, and I didn't meet Frank initially. I met him later, but the guy I did meet was, as you said, Lowell George, who had been with Frank's band for a little while, and he was. I saw a photo of him on that record on Uncle Meat. So a guy named Jeffrey Simmons from a group called a group called Eureka was the guy that turned me on to Lowell, and then there was a secretary at Warner's. Frank had two labels, Bizarre and Straight. I called Bizarre label.
That sounds
And
like the right one to call, right?
I think so too. So uh, anyway, I was eventually introduced to Lowell, and the entire lid blew off from then, and it's still doing the same thing. So,
I wonder, how did you guys settle on the name Little Feat? Little Feat. What's that about?
well, Jimmy Carl Black, who was the drummer, one of the drummers with the Mothers of Invention, with Frank Zappa and those guys, he took a look at Lowell's feet one day, and Lowell's feet were like earth pads. They were as wide as they were long, darn near. I mean, they weren't, but they kind of had that appearance. And Jimmy Carl Black said, "Man, Lowell, you got them little bleeping feet there." And so Lowell took that comment and changed the feet to a EA, as in the Beatles, and that's how we got the name.
How great is that? Another moment, seemingly, of a little bit of serendipity. Giving Lowell a hard time about his feet, boom, you've got a band name.
Yeah, it's we the it didn't happen overnight. In fact, the first I think we auditioned about 14 bass players the first year. This is in 1969, of which Paul Barrere was one of them, who later, I think two years later, came in to play guitar with us and was there until he passed away in 2019. But Paul went up to Lowell and he says, "Look, well, I don't really know how to play bass." And Lowell says, "Well, you play the guitar. It's It's got two strings less." So it was like poor Paul was like thrown into the fire at that point. And we went on to get Roy Estrada in the band, and um, he was with us, I think, for a couple of years. But yeah, it was a free for all back then. Colin.
I think the music had a quality of being something of a universally tight free for all. It seemed like the influence, the eclectic nature of the music that you guys were playing was off the charts. It felt like a free for all in terms of influence, but it came together in a way that felt, I don't know if I would say precise, but felt right. It
Well,
felt
yeah, no,
natural.
there was a structure to it, and we were really good musicians too, so that helped, right? So we could play more sophisticated stuff. Um, I mean, Zappa's band was all over the map time-wise, and I mean, in terms of time signatures, right?
Right.
Grateful Dead, they were much different than the Mothers, but they had a lot of time signature excursions as well. So um,
The
it
11 and
was,
things like that.
yeah. So we had something called the fan, which is da 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 bum bum boom da bum bum 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6. So it's 7 7 8 time, and then went into 10 8 time at one point. So um, yeah, it was just Little Feat was not a commercial band, so we had initially a tough time selling records. Because people trying to figure out who the hell we were. We were like everybody's secret surfing spot, you know. I mean, they loved us, but they didn't want everybody to know about us. So the labels were trying to figure out, well, how do you package these
Yeah.
guys? Because the music is, like you said, very eclectic. Um, Something would sound like a traditional country song, and then something else would be, um, rock and roll. But all of it had a slight slant to it that was engaging, but it was also, how do you categorize it? So um, that's what happens when you're doing stuff that is, influenced by things, but also has a modicum of originality about it.
Well, I got to tell you, Bill, you answered my next question straight off. I read that quote that you just said. In fact, that you described Feet's music as like a secret surfing spot, and it's clear
Hmm.
that there's so much musical influence. It feels like it's much harder to categorize Little Feat than maybe other bands. I was going to ask what is Little Feat's music and how you describe it or categorize it, but I think now the better question would be, is it futile to look to categorize Feat's music? Is that a complete exercise in futility?
Well, not really. I mean, listen, I love it. I love that you're saying that first and foremost. Uh, I mean, people have called it all kinds of things, with funk and rock and R&B and sophistifunk, which is what I think Sam Clayton and Tim Gradney called it. Um, but
That might be my
I don't.
favorite.
Yeah, I love that. I love that too. But I just got to say that essentially what we're playing is and influenced by, at least in the beginning, was American music. It was rock and roll, but country, some um, folk music, that just snuck in there as well. But it was just a panoply of musical influences. I mean, in some of my solos, I used to throw in. There was a classical composer named Charles Ives, who I think was from Connecticut. He was in the banking industry, but he had all this really strange music that he came up with, avant-garde kind of stuff, and where it would sound like. Well, he described his music as like two marching bands coming from either side of town, and as they crisscross one another, they're both playing different music, and you're hearing this cacophony of sound. That was Charles Ives. So I would throw in a thing called some southpaw pitching was the name of the piece. So nothing was out of bounds for us. I mean, Little Feat today, we take in more world music and try and incorporate that into our music. So stuff from Africa, from wherever, we're keeping a pretty broad and open mind as to um, how we want to put music out that says what we want to say to people, and what we feel keeps us on our proverbial toes.
Right
So anyway.
on. Well, let's talk about then. Little Feat has been playing for a long time. Of course, Uh, Lowell left this universal plane in '79. Feet would take
Hmm.
a hiatus until '88. And since then, a ton of records, original releases. You've been a steady presence on the road, high level profile. How, when you think back over Feet's tenure, what are some of the major evolutions or changes? How have you seen Little Feat evolve over the years with personnel changes, changes in music or influence?
Well, the changes for me began in 1972 when we were playing Dixie Chicken, that album. And what came in, first of all, Roy Estrada was replaced uh, with Kenny Gradney and Sam Clayton, and we began this more the New Orleans style of music, at least in Dixie Chicken. But that became more of a staple for us in terms of the way we would attack certain songs. But the big thing for me was the advent of incorporating synthesizers into to what was being played. So the guys that were programming for Stevie Wonder, Bob McGoloff and Cecil Malcolm, they came in for a song that Lowell had, which I can't remember the name of, but it needed or required some synthesizer music. So they programmed it. And initially I wasn't put off by what they did. I was put off by synthesizers in general. And I went, well, hang on, if a piano can sound like six different things, if you got Randy Newman, myself, or Dr. John, or Little Richard playing it, might sound like five or six different instruments. What does that what does that say about creating sounds for a synthesizer? It seemed endless to me, so I gravitated to it right after that. Once I compartmentalized how to, after Lowell's death, and getting back, like you said, in 1988, the reason we did it was um, the importance of what Little Feat um, was. I don't want to say buried along with Lowell, but it really wasn't. It was for me. It was because I was trying to get away from it. But I was playing with James Taylor, with Jackson Brown, Stevie Nicks, Bonnie Raitt, Emmylou Harris, etc. And everywhere I'd go, people go, "Oh yeah, Little Feat," and I go, "Really? Oh, cool." It over that 8-year period, it dawned on me that Little Feat was bigger than any of us. Um, so the idea of putting a band back together and calling it Little Feat, how could you do that without Lowell George? And I thought you do it by the music that you write and the people you have playing it. I told the same thing to Phil Lesh when he was talking to me. I was in one of the first incarnations of playing with Phil Lesh and his bands that he went out with, Phil and Friends. And I said, he was talking about, well, the Grateful Dead, we don't always get together or like each other and this and that. I said, well, you're in a band, right? So
Right.
I said, well, here's the thing, Phil. If and when you ever decide to play music with those guys again, just to see what it sounds like, the, there's a lot of things I know and a lot of things I don't know, but I do know this, that the thought of putting the Grateful Dead back together will cross your mind, and I guarantee it. And it sure as heck did. They did the same thing we did. They realized that the core of what they were playing, even without Jerry, even without Lowell, it still hung together because of the songs and the musicianship that played it. And later, Phil decided, well, he wanted to do his own thing and didn't fit in with them for whatever reason. That's okay. But the initial thought, as I told him, was you're going to want to have that band back together for a while. So the next incarnation for us was because we brought in Craig Fuller for Let It Roll, with Sean Murphy, and we did several albums with her. Um, then we took it back to the boys' club, I guess is the best way to put it, with Paul and myself, and um, I love Sean to this day. I mean, I just her influence was great on many many levels. But the band wanted to try something different, so we did. And after Brer's passing in 2019, which would have made the 50th year anniversary for us, the question was once again whether we should continue or not. And a fellow named Scott Gerard entered the picture. I had met him on a Doobie Brothers tour when he was the musical director and playing guitar for um, Greg Allman. And his he grew up wanting to play in bands that were like Little Feat, as it turned out. Uh, and so when this opportunity happened, he was prepared for us. You know, we were down in Jamaica playing some music, and he stepped up to the plate and hit it out of the park every time he got up on stage with us. So we continued the band with him. We made a change in the drums to Tony Leone, and we it was sad for a while, but we said goodbye to Gabe Ford, and but we really started to coalesce as a band there. I mean, but the the historically the weighing factor on all of us on the planet was COVID-19.
Right.
So we were playing long distance, but we couldn't play together. We couldn't tour. We couldn't do anything. And so all that was a right mess, as they say. And but in 2021, when things start to open up again, we finally got together to play. And the question, honestly, Colin, was whether we would get along. I mean, because we had only been doing things, recording long distance with each other. In fact, our first song we recorded was Long Distance Love. And that's when we said Tony's got the gig. It's a very subtle song to play, and he nailed it absolutely perfectly. I was listening to him, and I was in Montana where I live, and he was in New York with Charlie Martin as our sound engineer. And I was listening to it, and I said, okay, so you got Richie's part. Now let me hear Tony Leone. And he did. It was fantastic.
So that brings us right up to now, then. And of course, in April, you guys are kicking off with the last farewell tour.
Mhm.
And I wonder what makes now feel like the right time to kick off a farewell tour? Why 2026? Why is this the right time to
Well,
say farewell from touring?
well, what it does for us, because I was not in agreement with it at first. I thought, gosh, I mean, retire? I'm not going to retire. I don't know. But then I thought, well, hang on a second. Maybe what this is going to do, and I think what it's helped is it brings a certain focus, because this thing could take 2.5 years to unwind. And even at the end of that, you're mainly what you're doing, should you want to continue, is just not jump on a bus every night. Um, play a residency, record another album or two, play with other. I mean, I record with other people anyway, but um, you know, just keep it wide open, but nix the idea of tours that are continual. And I've been on them forever, and it wasn't just me. I mean, Sam Clayton is of an age that I don't know. I mean, he's out touring with us now. I don't know how much longer he'll be able to do it.
Right.
Um, so it's that kind of thing. It's just maybe it was just. I always used to say when I was younger, if I'm up on stage and dropping balls in center field like Willie Mays toward the end of his career, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. And I'm I'm a long way from 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 being in that category. But um, there's just a certain. I mean, look. I mean, I like my heroes are guys like Yarma Kaukonen, and what is he, 85?
Right.
And he's
Yeah.
still playing, doing it. Dylan, Jagger, and the guys. Uh,
Willie.
Willie, I mean, gosh, he's what, 110 now.
Phil played right up until he left, and same with Bobby Weir.
Yeah, and Weir's. I mean, what a great guy and musician, and just boy, that was sad when he passed. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, man. So, but yeah, I think bop till you drop is generally the name of the game. But how do you bop is the way I started to think of it in different terms. And I'm not adverse to at some point. giving the bus driver my key and saying adios. Um, we'll figure out a different way to do it. So I think that's really where we're at um, on all fronts. But playing music and writing music, um, that's the only gig I've ever had. So I'm not gonna. I mean, other than as a paper boy, I did have that gig.
Well, so you're not going back to being a paper boy, and I think
Hopefully not.
all the Feet fans can feel really good knowing that while this may be a departure from touring, it is not. It doesn't sound like a retirement from music by any stretch.
I don't think it's gonna be. It's the door's open. Should we decide that that's what it is 2.5 years from now or 2 years from now, whenever it happens, we're just gonna let it unfold. But I think that uh, having it having a part of your life where you can actually um, control something. I mean, in a good way too. I mean, because of focus, right?
Right.
Those opportunities are not allowed us very often, if at all. And I thought the more I got into thinking about how we could manage this last few years of our career, I thought, this is exactly what we should be doing. I wish more people had the opportunity to do it as well. So what it means, like if we play the Ryman Auditorium, the odds are we won't play it again. So there's some rules that go along with that, but that may not extend to if we're on a cruise we've been doing more cruises lately. I think we should just go out and travel on a boat from time to time. I think it's an interesting way to meet people and to see you know see certain things. So maybe we'll continue doing some of that. I don't know.
Well, that sounds like a darn good way to do it. To me, of course, you out there in Radio Land can catch Bill Payne and Little Feat at the Tennessee Theater coming up April the 13th, with which will be the third or fourth show in this
Sure.
farewell tour. I think, do I have it right? The word is that you'll be supported by Trey Hensley at that show at the Tennessee.
I sure hope so. I love Trey. That guy is something else, man.
Trey is a
Yeah, I
good
think
friend of
we're not doing a lot of
WDVX.
dates with him, but thank you for bringing that up. He is, gosh, well, he's now with Vector Management, which are the same people that handle us, Brian Penix and those guys, and yeah, he's in good hands, and we're the first time I heard Trey, man, I went downstairs to the dressing room. I said, what were you like? Because he was with his partner at that time, and I said, what are you doing? Like throwing $20 bills out to the audience? These people are going bananas for you. Yeah,
He's a special picker.
he sure is a great guy too.
Well, of course, that's all going down April the 13th at the Tennessee Theater. Last question for you, Bill. What do you want folks who come to see you at the Tennessee to get at the show and to walk away from the show feeling and thinking? What are you looking to deliver to people on this last farewell tour?
Well, I think whether it's the last farewell tour or any gig that we play, I want people to come in, relax, have a good time. Um, there's enough out there to drive us crazy outside those doors. Let's take it as a refuge as to what it is for me to play music, for you guys to listen to it, and walk away with a sense um, a good time was had, but also that maybe it touches your heart in a couple of ways you didn't think it might, with some acoustic music that we played that evening. Um, songs are important. Like I said, they tap that part of your brain that is a form of time travel, and it takes you back and also brings you to snap back into the present as well. Let's enjoy and embrace these moments when we have the time to do it. That's my hope.
Absolutely beautifully said there from Bill Payne, co founder of Little Feat. He's joined me today on East Tennessee's own WDVX, where it's Uncle John's Marble City Jam. Thank you, Bill, for joining us.
A real pleasure, man. Thank you again. So